in those final moments of a long shift, whether you're a dedicated doctor or tirelessly working through the night, inspiration can come from the simplest of pleasures. Farewell coffee is more than just a drink. It's a moment of awakening.
Crafted with passion in small batches, each cup of Farewell coffee is a blend of rich flavors and heartfelt stories. Born from a tradition of camaraderie at a fire station table, it's the spark that ignites conversations, fuels friendships, and rekindles spirits.
So embark on this flavorful and inspiring adventure with us. Place your first order at www.farewellcoffeeroasters.com and discover the story with every sip. Use the code BSFreeMD15 for 15% off your first order. It's Farewell Coffee Roasters. We love it, we drink it, and we can't wait for you to try it.
Finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
All right, buckle up, kids. We're back for another episode of BS Free MD. Yes, we explore the thrilling roller coaster of medical adventures. Today, we host a brilliant guest, Dr. Mike Simpson, from small town roots in Tehachapi, California, to the front lines of special operations. Yes, a Green Beret, a special operator who then went back to medical school, became an ER doctor, and then went back to the front lines as an ER doctor. You can't make this up. Meanwhile, later in life, he actually gets on the, Finding Hitler or whatever it was, television show. This guy has had a really interesting life and some great perspectives.
Yeah, not only has he done all that, he's an avid practitioner of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, an MMA, a fight physician, a true warrior, and a healer at heart. I love it.
Yes, outstanding. We're thrilled to have him share his journey, challenges, and triumphs. So hold on tight as we dive in the fascinating world of medicine and beyond with Dr. Mike Simpson. Welcome to BS Free MD. We are thrilled to have you.
Thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Like we said before, your background's way better than ours.
It just means that I have some ADHD, and it took me a very long time to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah. So. Well, exactly. But it's amazing. It's amazing when you focus that ADHD, how much you can get done. Reading your bio is just amazing to me. So let's start at the beginning. You grew up in small town California.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then how did that upbringing end up with a military, start your military career?
Yeah. Excellent question. So it's, I wasn't born in small town California, but, thankfully, my parents moved to small town California in what would be considered my formative years. So I finished out fifth grade in a town called Tehachapi, California, and then I did sixth middle school and all of high school in Tehachapi, which nobody's ever heard of, and that's okay. The nearest big city, Bakersfield, was a big city to us, and I think what that kind of gave me or cultivated in me values wise was, small town values. It's self-reliance, doing the right thing, even when nobody's looking, the advantage of, we had lived in LA and we'd lived in some pretty rough neighborhoods in LA. And now we lived in a place where nobody locked their doors. Literally, like ever. Like you could walk up and just grab a doorknob and walk into somebody's living room if you wanted to. I don't know if it's that way now. 500 kids in my high school. My graduating class was 122, and I graduated 102 out of 122. So I've done pretty well from where I was ranked. And the things I'd be interested to know what the guidance counselors had in their notes during that time, but. The crowd of kids that I hung with is, if I had to put myself into a category, I hung with the jocks really more than anything else, even though I'm actually not what you would consider highly athletic. I'm not very coordinated. Um, I never made it past second string all through varsity football. But that was the group that I hung out with, and those are the guys that I would hunt with on weekends, and and during the summer and on vacation, and the guys that I would hang out with. And the going into the military is something that interested a few of the guys that I hung out with. And this was the mid '80s, so Ronald Reagan was in office. Military service, volunteer military service is something that kind of become cool again after the '70s and the early '80s, and kind of getting over Vietnam as a country. It was cool to be patriotic again. It was cool to serve in the military again. And my junior year, I had actually already signed up on a Ranger contract when Grenada happened my junior year. So I can't say that that's what made me decide to go on the Rangers, but it certainly reinforced my decision to do so. So that was the upbringing path. Never not my dad was in the Navy, as were his brothers and as was his father. But that was because, hey, we got to do some a couple years of mandatory service and get it checked off before we can go on with our lives. It didn't have any lifelong military people. Nobody who'd done anything in the Army, and certainly nobody who'd ever done anything in special operations.
So how long did you do special operations?
I did special operations. I guess depending on how you add it up, I had a 32-year career, which that career, I was on active duty when I went to medical school and went to residency and everything else. I did 17. I had 17 years enlisted before I went to med school, and that was all special operations. My first unit was the 1st Ranger Battalion. I went from there. I spent a brief time where I thought I wanted to get out and be a police officer. I was in 20th Special Forces Group during that time, and then went on to 7th Special Forces Group later. So I had 17 years as an operator when I went to med school, and then I did another roughly 6 years in the Joint Medical Augmentation Unit afterwards. So 23 out of my 32 years were in SOF. And that's basically what you cut out of that is the 7 years I was in med school and residency, and then a little bit on the tail end because I wanted to give myself a buffer of about a year and a half before I retired that I knew I wasn't going to have to deploy.
Okay, so I got to ask, what was it that motivated you after 17 years to go into medical school? And usually 17 years after high school, most people are like, okay, I just want to settle into life.
Yeah. And obviously I hadn't previously demonstrated any academic chops to speak of, because during the short period of time, like I say, that I got out, thought I wanted to maybe go into law enforcement. I went to Georgia Southern University, and I was a B student. At best, I think I had maybe 1 or 2 A's here and there, but I was a pretty solid B, middle of the road B student. Cause I wasn't really applying myself. I was checking a block, kind of like I'd done in high school. It's like, oh, I need to get a degree, if I'm going into law enforcement, because it'll help me with promotions and stuff later. But then when I came back in, initially I was a special forces demolition sergeant. So I was playing with explosives and building stuff. And I decided to go to the medic course later on. And that was really the point where I was like, wow, I'm really fascinated by medicine. I'm fascinated. And oddly enough, as much as my life is focused on trauma and combat medicine, trauma is actually not even what interested me. The whole, I had a tremendous interest in pathology and disease processes, in figuring out, to me, somebody coming in with a chief complaint and then me having to kind of figure out what tests to run and put my detective hat on. That was almost like being on a game show for me. So when I was in training to become an SF medic, because there's a lot, special forces medics do a lot of just general medicine. Because we're expected, if we deploy with a team somewhere in some far-flung corner of the world, we're going to be the medical authority for the team. So anything anybody might come down with, villagers might bring their kids to us. And that's happened to me. I ran a clinic in Bolivia for 6 months at one point in my career. So you're seeing a lot of disease process stuff, and you really have to be a jack of all trades, as you two are supremely familiar with
Hey,
in your medical career.
hey,
And,
can I interrupt for a second?
sure,
Because I know that I've had this, in the back of my head, talking to people in the past that we've worked with, people
yeah.
we've met, and I know a lot of our listeners. So, can you tell us a little bit, like when you're a medic in the military, what training? Because you're right. Like I know that you do a whole lot of stuff for the whole team. What kind of training do you get as a medic? Like, is it like a 6-month course? Is it kind of like a PA?
Mm-hmm.
2-year PA, like short course? I mean, because you guys cover a lot of stuff and are responsible for a lot. And I'm curious what kind of training you have to handle all that.
Yeah, for basic, basic what we call a vanilla Army medic. Um, imagine if you will, they get not quite they get trained kind of somewhere between an EMT basic and a paramedic, but not quite.
Okay.
With emphasis on some other things that a regular NAMT certified EMTB or EMTP wouldn't get, i.e., how to run sick call, and how to identify. The big thing is always learning what the most common thing is and learning what the most dangerous thing is. For
Right.
whether it's a cough or chest pain or whatever, right? So that's the big thing that they emphasize. And the regular medic course is not that long. I think their AIT is maybe six months, maybe 8 months. Most of them depend on kind of continuing education in their career to develop that and to really hone those skills. As an SF medic, when expected to on day one kind of hit the ground running and maybe run your own clinic, it's a little bit more intensive. So the first part of the course, and it's restructured. I went through quite a long time ago, so it's restructured. Although time wise, I think it's still about the same.
Okay.
It's about 18 months of medical training. So the analogy that you gave is kind of like a short course physician assistant is actually very apt. It's very, very close. And,
Okay.
that's what it's SF medics going on and becoming PAs. I think, unless something has changed, we had a 100% pass rate of SF medics those who chose to go on and pursue a career as a PA. I had never heard about anybody failing out from it.
We used to work with one.
Yeah,
he was a Green Beret, and he
Mm-hmm.
he was just absolutely outstanding.
So what kind of resources as a medic do you have, especially, in special forces? Is it the same as far as stuff's happening? Can you like pick up the line and call a physician and say, I got this going on, I need help? Are you it?
You might be it. The answer is it depends, right? It's you do have, the battalion surgeon always tells you, hey, you get down range and you get into something that you just feel like you're out of your depth. Don't hesitate to give me a call. Of course, now it would be email.
Right.
When I was deploying on a team, that wasn't a thing. And even late in my SF career, when email was a thing, we didn't have internet connectability when we deployed places. So usually it meant, hey, I'm going to call either on his personal number. I'm going to grab the sat phone, call on his personal number, or call his office number and say, hey, I don't know. It's I don't know what's going on here. This is what I've got in front of me, and I need some help with it. Actually, very early in my career as a medic, I had a kid come in Costa Rica with exercise-induced rhabdo, and I was like, wow, I'm not really sure what to do here. And I ended up in retrospect, kind of by accident, doing everything right. So I was fortunate and the patient was fortunate, but you deploy with a lab set. So you can actually run a lot of your own labs. I know how to do, God, I'd hate to have to do it with a gun to my head now, but I can do a by hand WBC count with differential if I absolutely have to. I can spin down urine and do an analysis on that. I can do an H&H. I can do check a stool sample for parasites, all this other stuff. And I deployed with a hand centrifuge that you would crank to spin
Wow.
down samples. Yeah, which was kind of crazy. We called it the SF. It was called the SF tax set, the lab set that we had at the time, and it's actually evolved quite a bit. So they have a lot of point of care. Put the drop on the chip and put it in the machine and see what kind of reading you get. Now we didn't have that when I was an SF medic. So and a lot of it you had to depend. You had to sometimes you had to kind of kick people into their civilian system and hope that all the terrible stories that you heard about this developing country medical care maybe weren't true. But I can say that when I was in Bolivia, I would have younger physicians coming to me because I was actually older than them, and they wanted to staff patients with me. And I'm like, whoa, hey, you've been to medical school and residency. I'm a medic. Like, if you're going to staff your patient, it probably shouldn't be with me. But I appreciated listening to it anyway because it actually helped in my education.
That's really humbling, but wow, interesting. And how cultures, would you think it was just the age gap because of the cultural thing, or did they not know? I mean,
I think age certainly played a part in it, and part of it too, I have to say, is this. I'll kind of set the stage for you. This was when I was running the clinic in Bolivia. The Bolivian military, the Bolivian police officers, and their families, I would see, and the other SF medic there, and the Bolivian medics would see. We also had on the compound where I stayed, we had they called it a jail, not a prison, but really people were serving long-term sentences there, and it's in the prisoner bill of rights, for lack of a better term, that they have in Bolivian law. If you are in jail, you are entitled to see a doctor, a licensed physician, once a week, if you so desire. So once a week, I would have some local doctors come in and they'd kind of take over a couple of my exam rooms, and they'd bring the prisoners over one by one. And, they would see them for whatever either their chronic complaints were or their sick call complaints, their acute or, subacute conditions. Because I ran the clinic, because I wore scrubs every day, I didn't wear a uniform. And I was a little bit older, and I have a tendency to go in and kind of fill up a room with my ego a little bit. So I kind of portrayed that authority figure vision to them, and I think they were, in large part, I think they were responding to that.
interesting.
So when you went to medical school, because you were still on active duty, was the plan to always go to do an ER residency and then go back and be forward deployed as a physician?
The plan was always to get back to special operations as a physician, and I didn't know at the time. I didn't even know the unit that I ended up being a member of, the Joint Medical Augmentation Unit. I didn't even know about when I was an SF medic, because it's a tier 1 special mission unit that directly supports the other tier 1 special mission units like SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force. So I wasn't even aware of their existence. They don't have any SF medics in the JMAL. So I didn't know it was there. My plan was to come back, either be a battalion surgeon in Ranger Regiment or back in SF. And the war, I was actually in the medical school application process when 9/11 kicked off. So I knew that I'd be coming back on a wartime footing. Going into med school, I was 80-20. 80%, I was very much leaning towards emergency medicine, but 20%, I was still entertained because there were so many things about family medicine, about clinical medicine, about being a clinician and a diagnostician that I appreciated so much, that I still 20%, I was kind of holding out hope that I might do that. There was a big shift in special operations once the war kicked off. It used to be that you typically would find about a 50-50 split in battalion surgeons in the soft community. Half of them would be family medicine and half of them would be emergency medicine. And that changed pretty drastically during GWOT. It really became probably about 90-10. SF medics were of the mindset that we need to have our own kind of shadow trauma system in theater wherever we go, and much more of a demand for not only EM docs, but EM docs who had fellowship training in how to run an EMS system. So at a point in medical school, and I'm not quite sure where it was, I made the decision that, I'm definitely going to go EM. Although when I interviewed, because FM was my second choice, and it was a very close second. I did interview with two different FM programs, and then matched at the EM program that was my first choice.
So how, I think I should know this or did know this, but I've forgotten. When you're in the military, you don't have your own separate med school residency programs in the U.S., do you?
We actually, so there is a military medical school, the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences, which is in Bethesda, Maryland. It's that the university at large is called, we call it USIS. And then the actual School of Medicine is the F. Edward Hebert School of Medicine.
So if you're in the military in any branch, that's where you go?
Not necessarily, because there's only so many class slots every year.
Okay.
So those are kind of the coveted slots. For reason being, you get a full paycheck plus a housing allowance. I literally I never had to pay for a book. I never had to pay for a stethoscope or an otoscope or ophthalmoscope. Like they wheel you wheel in a book cart and you load it up with all your textbooks, with all your stuff for your clinical rotations. Everything is paid for, plus I don't have to worry about, paying the rent, where my next meal's coming from or anything. All of that's taken care of. So that's considered like the slightly more coveted way to go.
Okay.
Mostly for financial reasons. You could also do what's called HPSP, the Health Professional Scholarship Program, which is I get accepted at Texas Tech or San Antonio or Houston, and I file the paperwork through the military saying, hey, I want you to pay for my school, and then I'm going to give you some time back. If you go to USIS, you owe 6 years. If you do the HPSP route, you owe, I think it's 3 years.
Okay.
And that's after residency.
And so then in residency, do you enter the match and compete with civilians, non-military?
So I did the military match. If you're a USIS med student,
okay,
they expect you to at least enter the military match. If you're an HPSP student, you can say, you know what, I've made some, maybe you're in Dallas, or maybe you're in North Texas. You've made some good contacts in Dallas at Parkland or someplace like that. Or maybe you're in Florida. You've made some good contacts at, Tampa Gen or somewhere else. And you say, you know what, I want to stay local. I've got a house. I've got kids in school, or my wife has a job. I want to do, I'm going to do a civilian residency, and then I'll come back and pay you back my time afterwards. And they're okay with that. But if you've attended USIS, they expect you have to, it's the paperwork required to get out of the military match is actually really difficult. It's the only case that I could think of where somebody could get away with it is most of the services have very, very few neurosurgery slots. In fact, I want to say it may be as low as like one per service. Like it's very, very few.
Dang.
So if you had your heart set on and I know a couple of people that did this, they were USIS grads, but they said, hey, I matched at a neurosurgery program. Okay, no problem. You can go do that. So
yeah, well, obviously being born, raised, trained in Canada, I never figured it out. I mean, being in the U.S. and working, and we know a lot of physicians that were in military, went to med school when they were in the enlisted or in the military. I never really asked the question like, oh yeah, how does the military program work separately? It's just like, yeah, I did that residency there, OB/GYN or family practice or surgeons. And I'm like, I never knew if they had to do if they had a separate system or they did civilian or how it works. So thanks for explaining that.
Yeah. I did a 3-year EM residency in San Antonio at two different military hospitals at the time. That was when we would split our shift burden between Lackland Air Force Base, Wilford Hall Medical Center, and Brooke Army Medical Center, which is just off of Fort Sam Houston. I did have you do a lot of out rotations though. I did my toxicology rotation at New York Toxicology Center in New York City. I did multiple PEDS ER rotations, both at Dell Children's in Austin and Texas Children's in Houston. Did an EMS rotation in Austin as well, and did some trauma rotations at Brackenridge Hospital in Austin.
Okay.
So tell us about this augmented medical unit. That I find that really fascinating. So is it all like family medicine and EM guys, or do you have surgeons and anesthesiologists? Like, is it a little miniature hospital team that goes out, or how is that all broken up?
Yeah, so there's actually no family medicine. It's all EM, surgeons, CRNAs, and PAs. And the PAs are the team leaders. Those are typically the guys that came from that SF or Ranger background. They've got a little bit more time in. You know, I was kind of I was a little bit of a different story. You know, the fact that I had a similar background to most of the PAs in the unit. You know, I had a Ranger tab, an SF tab, 17 years as an operator, and I was a little bit older. But I was pretty atypical for most of the physicians. So, and, you know, you deploy in small teams, which, you know, together you're designed to be able to perform casualty resuscitation all the way through damage control surgery. And then you have the capabilities to split and run like a resuscitation style team, an immediate response team, to stabilize casualties on target or immediately adjacent to the target, and then pass them off to that surgical element that's part of your team. So, you know, then if the PA and I might go out on target with a tactical element, stabilize a patient on the ground, and then the helicopter comes in and it lands. It's our surgeon and our CRNA that we hand them off to.
Okay, now that's interesting. So
do you ever have, or I was thinking, probably it's not in an emergency situation to have like orthopedic surgeons there as well.
We actually had a couple of orthopods in the unit.
Okay.
They were considered, I used to call them the leather bucket seats. They were like an added feature. It wasn't, you know, we could deploy without one, but it was always great when we had one. And that really drastically increased our capability, because since most orthopedic surgeons have done some type of damage control surgery in their residency, we could split off and run 2 surgical cases at once if we had to. That typically meant that I was going to have to do some double duty and maybe run some TIVA for the orthopod, and thankfully we never had such a big mass cal that happened. But on the times that I did deploy with an orthopedic surgeon, we ended up a few times having to do some fixation. One guy had a shattered hand, a leg injury on another one. So we definitely make use of the orthopods. A couple of times I deployed, didn't have an orthopod, and had some orthopedic injuries, and the first words out of the surgeon's mouth were, "I don't do bones. This is a mic issue." And so nice. I had to do that. Yeah.
So you said that you would go out potentially to like on target with a PA. So were all of the physicians that would do that, were they all did they have JSOC experience? Were they all Rangers or SEALs or whatever, or were you kind of an anomaly in that world?
I was a little bit of an anomaly, and I wasn't alone in that. I wasn't the only SF and or Ranger qualified EM physician that we had in the unit. Somebody who maybe, you know, went high school, undergraduate, medical school, residency, and then came to the unit. They weren't going to be able to do something like that kind of as quickly with no questions asked as I was. We do have a very intense train up that we run for guys like that to give them an introduction to everything. We run it a couple of times a year. That's meant to bring people up to speed, kind of depending on how they perform on that and the comfort level. Again, you know, the PA is the team leader, so ultimately everything is up to that PA team leader and his comfort level with, you know, what that physician has demonstrated in training. Because it's one of those things you never, you know, it's like anything. You never know until you get out there how are they going to perform when you start to hear that snap next to your head? That's very obviously a bullet passing in your vicinity at a high velocity. How are they going to handle that? Because things are definitely different when you get out. You get off linoleum and you get out from under fluorescent lighting. It's a whole different world. And working out of a bag as opposed to working in a trauma bay is drastically different. But like I said, we run intense train ups for that. We continue while we're deployed to train each other. We're constantly, doing classes when we're not out on missions to bring people up to speed so that they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. It's the whole Mike Tyson thing. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the head.
Exactly.
And I can, I would be terrified if I was a special operator that I was bringing somebody along that I potentially would have to babysit.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? And it's the I can't say enough in praise for the PAs that act as leaders in that unit, because it's a tremendous amount of pressure on their shoulders all the time. Now, I mean, aside from the fact that we typically are the go-to for a casualty, right? We may not even have backup in some of these theaters. They also have to, they have to make sure we're integrated properly, and we don't get too far forward over our skis. We don't, make promises that we can't keep. But also, each and every time that we do something with one of these units, there's going to be a lasting impression on that. So, if you're the guy that goes out and has an accidental discharge with his weapon, or his flashlight keeps going off when it's not supposed to, or you're making a whole bunch of noise, or you're holding up the movement. These are things that will not be forgotten. And, not only does that mean that you're going to probably not go out for the rest of that trip, but on a leadership level, there's going to be a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant, or a team leader and a team sergeant, or maybe even a troop sergeant major that has a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. And they remember, that one time we tried to take those guys out one time, and they compromised the whole mission, and everything went to shit because of them. Pardon my French, but so you definitely that burden is on you at all times, because you have to show that you are an asset and not a liability.
Well, May and I know are thinking the exact same thing. We're thinking about a lot of people that we've either worked with or trained that would poo their diaper at some of the stuff we'd see in a rural urgent care, let alone being shot at and trying to slam a chest tube in somebody who's, so we've often wondered if there should be a kind of a more of a personal character test when it comes to getting into medical school, because the job is actually pretty intense, especially in emergency medicine.
Yeah. And it's a little bit, and I agree with you. We could probably do a whole podcast just talking about that there's really nothing in undergraduate that adequately shakes you down for if you are fit for a career in medicine. It might shake you down for, are you fit to meet the academic requirements? But that has nothing to do with, like you said, whether or not, it's some people, it's unfortunately, some people are starting their third year of medical school when they find out they can't stand the sight of blood. And that's unfortunate.
I mean, it's an issue. And I mean, we worked in a small town. I mean, these people become your friends. You go to church with them. You run into them at the gas station, all of this stuff. And then the next day you get called in because their 18-week-old baby has acute leukemia and is going to die within the next hour and a half. And you have to deal with that. And then you have to, when you finish dealing with that, you have to go back to work and see another 35 people that afternoon and keep smiling and be functional.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. And again, a total side note, but it has made us sad with some of the softening they have done with the soft skills. I think have been a little bit overemphasized in medical schools now.
Where we were working last, we actually had third year residents come in for urgent care, because we were doing urgent care for the last 13 years rotation, and they would be in their third year going, I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's either, I don't know, you really missed the mark, or the program in general has missed the mark. If you've gotten all the way through med school and now you're in your third year residency and you're like, this isn't for me, like, what are we doing wrong? But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
So
Yeah.
let's pick the story up with leaving. You leave the military.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then how long did you practice emergency medicine?
I practice emergency medicine, I guess if you don't count residency. So I graduated residency in 2009, and I continued to practice. I practiced for up until the early days of COVID. So I got 10 years of practice in an ER setting that I was regularly working ER shifts for 10 years. It really was, by the time we got into COVID, excuse me, I was only working locums. I had so many side projects going on that there was no hospital system that I could work for that was going to be okay with that, hey, periodically I'm just going to take off for 3 months and you're not going to see me. So I switched to working locums, which was great. And it was perfect for me. It kept my skills sharp. I do a couple shifts a month. And then lo and behold, during COVID, when the ER censuses dropped to about 25% of normal. In other words, when they drop to the people that actually do have emergencies, not the people that are just there because it's a convenient place to be seen.
Yes.
The first shifts that they cut, of course, were the locum shifts.
Okay, wait. So people are going to be saying that.
I know.
No. That's not what the news. That's not what the media said. The ERs were slammed.
No, ERs were not slammed.
Well, they were packed. They were packed with boarding patients, right? Because we were boarding patients. So it's like, I got nowhere to put you. And oh, by the way, because of COVID precautions, it's what I might have got you in and out in an hour and a half is now going to mean 6 hours because, everything is at a we're basically going to sterilize the x-ray room between each and every patient. And, everything has become so painstakingly slow. And, we're even debating whether the scribe can go in the room with me. Right. Because, we're so worried about all this other stuff that, the number of patients who were signing in, the census was dropped. The amount of work, I don't think, was necessarily dropped. And again, a lot of it had to do with, you go in and the board, you're working in a 26 bed ER, and 18 of those are boarding patients, because there's no room up on the floor anymore. And then you add to that all of the, I'm still getting paged to go upstairs and intubate. I'm still getting paged to go upstairs and do this and do that. And unfortunately, and I've seen this a few times in my career in ER, that you'll get within a hospital system, whether it's a military system or a civilian system, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh my God, I've got somebody in my waiting room that just was positive for COVID, so I'm sending them to your ER. It's like, well, why?
Exactly.
Yes.
I got nothing I can do for them right here. So people were busy, and I think the warnings that went out, I think the warning of, hey, don't go to the ER if you don't have to, was a great idea. If for no other reason than it needlessly was going to expose you, because this was a common thing, especially in the early days of COVID, is I would look at what was in the waiting room, and 2 or 3 would be wants COVID test. And let's say for the sake of argument that all 3 of them were positive, if you're coming into my ER for shoulder pain, you're now putting yourself at risk of interacting with them, even though I'm trying to keep them masked in the waiting room,
right,
or I'm trying to sequester them in a separate waiting room. Little side story for you. We had an Ebola scare in the military at one point, and we were particularly concerned about it on Fort Hood because we had some units deployed that were going to be in some of these endemic areas. And the 3 Corps surgeon's answer to this was, if any clinic anywhere in the system, if somebody comes in and they say, I'm concerned I might have Ebola, we want you to send them to the ER on post. And I said,
what?
Why do you want to send them to literally the most high traffic waiting room in a 100-mile radius to be around other people? I'm like, I would rather you go through a litany of questions because we already know that some of these are going to be, I think I have Ebola. Well, why? Well, because I saw it on TV and I've got a scratchy throat.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I had to show, there was he was not medical. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt, to some extent, but I had a lieutenant that sent one of his, one of his guys was on leave in an African country, came back, had some postnasal drip, probably from falling asleep on the flight home. And he sent him to the ER. And I looked at the country that he was in and I'm like, you were 5 countries away from Ebola.
Oh my gosh.
So I called his lieutenant. I had his lieutenant come to the ER and I printed out a map of Africa. And I said, this is where he was. We're going to call that Florida. And this is where the Ebola is. That's Oregon. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't
well,
need
actually,
to
the real Ebola
Yeah.
is actually in Oregon. Now,
I don't think you
just
get
come
any
from-
argument on that.
No kidding.
so it's great. So you do this ER thing and you have, a 10-year career. That's, for a lot of ER docs, that's a long career, actually. That's a, it's a...
Yeah, the
Yeah.
burnout rate's incredibly high. It
the
really
burnout
is.
rate is high.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? Because I see at your trailer here is Graybeard Performance,
Mhm.
and we got to talk a little bit about the book Honed. So what are you doing now? Because this is, I think we're going to probably start freaking each other out with the whole, the
You're gonna
healthcare
be growing
system.
out here.
Yeah, we're going to have it'll be bro crush time or whatever. But just the whole the whole business of how we do healthcare in the United States is, I don't think, broken. I think it's corrupted.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that we could be doing that to keep people healthy that are very inexpensive and but it's not a pill, it's not Ozempic, it's not whatever.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now?
Yeah. So what I'm doing now, as you said, I wrote a book which is this way.
Yep.
It's called Honed: Finding Your Edge as a Man Over 40. So the way that I came to write that book was I started to get a little bit of a social media presence, and I was still trying to lead the operator lifestyle in my 40s and even into my late 40s. And then when I retired, I went to work as a SWAT physician. So there's not as much of a demand on me, but I still spend an entire day in kit, and and go from I do room clearing on training days, and I stack up and I go to the breach point with the team, and I've got to be able to pull one of my guys out of harm's way. Me in full kit, them in full kit, the possibility of bullets whizzing by. So I still kind of had to maintain that same level of fitness. Plus, I just, I wasn't just going to hang up my spurs and not work out anymore. So I was always really keen on looking for what I needed to be doing to stay fit, especially as I got older. And I started putting a lot of that into my social media. And what the result of that was, I started to get a lot of emails of, hey, what do you think about this? I've been thinking about doing jujitsu, but I've got a herniated disc, and do you think it'd be okay? And I was on the wrestling team in high school, but now I've put on all this weight. I'm about 70 pounds overweight. How should I get back into it? And I just found myself answering a lot of these same questions kind of again and again and again. And I was like, I really wish I had, since I've answered all these questions so many times, I wish I just had it, I should just write it all down so I could point them in a direction and go, well, just read this. And you would think that was the aha moment. And I'm so dense, it actually was not. I had that thought, and I made it 3/4 of the way. I was like Jim Carrey's face in Dumb and Dumber. It's like, yeah. And then just went on about my business. And it wasn't until a guy named Tucker Max, who ran a company called Scribe Publishing, who was a best-selling author himself, he heard me kind of giving that advice to other people, and he goes, why don't you write a book on that? He's like, you've obviously studied it a lot. And at the time, I was getting ready to start Graybeard Performance, my supplement company. And I'm like, I really should. I should just put all this in a book. And thankfully, I had, between podcasts that I'd done, emails that I'd written, I'd done all the research. So I had all the clinical data already to support a lot of the stuff in the book. So it took me about 6 months during COVID to really compile it in book form and go back and forth with the editors and decide exactly what we wanted. And it got published, shot up to the top of the Amazon charts right away. still does very well, even though I don't even necessarily push it anymore. And that corresponded with me starting Graybeard Performance because, as you guys know, being physicians, right, most of these supplements and vitamins and supplements that we see on commercials on late night television are just absolute bullshit. I love Sheldon's line from The Big Bang Theory. Really, what you're paying for is brightly colored urine.
Yes.
And I didn't want to put more of that out in the market. So I looked at what I was taking, what I had already done the time. I'd gone to WebMD and looked up, what is turmeric going to work for me? Do cordyceps mushrooms have any validity? What B vitamins am I most likely deficient in? What other than melatonin, what can I be taking for healthy sleep? So I'd already looked all this stuff up, and I was kind of taking it piecemeal on my own. And then I packaged it all together, and I found a company that would make the supplements for me. And I started Graybeard Performance and launched it with an energy formula, kind of a clean pre-workout, again, with clinical data to support it, and a longevity formula that would help with inflammation, pain, pain, post-workout pain, and also healing. Help your body put itself back together, because the recovery phase, as you well know, is where we really start to slip off as we age, right? Our telomeres, we start to lose telomeres, and our cells' ability to repair themselves goes down and down and down. So I wanted to address that. And since then, I've expanded. I've added 2 more SKUs. I have a vitality formula which is for vascular health, brain health, oxygen, maximization of your oxygen utilization. And I also came up with a sleep formula because I'm a lifelong insomniac, which was made worse, of course, by shift work, both deployed and as an ER physician. Mm-hmm. So the book and the supplements kind of really complemented each other. And then I took it upon myself a little over a year ago to go out and pursue some formal training in hormone replacement, because I had already been on TRT myself, and that's something that I wanted to be able to provide, because I had seen so many people doing it wrong, and I'd gotten so many emails from people on, hey, does this sound? This is what my doctor's having me. I'm 3 months on, 3 months off, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gouging my own eyes out listening to this. They told me I could try Clomid for a week, and that if I didn't like that, and I'm like, oh my God, this. So I knew guys that were already doing it, that had been through training, and my only caveat was that I felt that I had to do some formal training before I did it. And it took me a while to find time in my schedule to get that done. And then once I did, I started, my concierge practice, which I call the Graybeard Performance Academy. And I just took on 5 more patients, and I'm probably going to announce in the next week that I think my patient load is about right, that I can take on 5 more going into the new year to manage people or manage men in their middle age who have kind of lost a step and might need some testosterone replacement. But only doing it in Texas right now. I have signed up for the Interstate Compact, but I don't want to. I get all the time, hey, I'm in this state, I'm in that state. Couldn't we kind of look the other way? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that.
No, you can't. Look
Absolutely not. We're not going to look the other way. I'm not going to lose my medical license for some dude who just really wants to have me as his doctor. I'm sorry. And it takes. I figured out to make it worth it for reciprocity, I really have to have 3 or 4 patients in a given state. Or potential patients in a given state for it to be worth it for me to get the state licensure in that location. So for now, I'm only doing Texas patients, but all my patients are doing really well, and I'm happy to be a part of their journey.
Well, you have the hardest license in the United States to get, which is Texas.
Which is Texas. So
yeah, it's I can tell you the nightmares. I almost didn't get a Texas license because I was too honest.
Yeah, no, it's Florida's not real easy. I actually had to sit in front of the Board of Medical Examiners because I had because I graduated from medical school in Florida, in Canada rather. So they, I didn't
It's
have,
a
I didn't,
Seinfeld-like
well,
experience. Really.
it was 4 hours of the soup Nazi.
You sit in
Oh,
the
I'll bet. Yeah,
Because,
I'll bet.
I sat there, I have a perfectly clean record, everything's fine. There's, there's no DUIs, there's no disciplinary action.
you
There's
get to hear everybody else.
But you get to hear everyone else pulls down their pants in
Yeah.
front of the board, and you're just sitting there waiting because there was like 76 items, and I think I was item 70.
Oh gosh.
So I'm sitting in there. It's August. It's hot as hell outside, but it's 68 degrees in the building. So I'm freezing to death, right? Like my heart rate went down to like 48. I'm going into torpor, and I'm listening to these guys. Well, you don't understand. I've had a license for 35 years in Puerto Rico, and they're like, you have no requirements. You never went to an American medical school. You never did an American exam, and you never did an American residency. You have nothing.
Yeah.
It's the law. There's nothing. You could be the smartest person in the world. And then people argue with these guys that own all of their chance of success. And I'm like,
fascinating.
It was just an amazing study in human nature.
Yeah.
So
well, I've had people, I've had similar arguments directed, kind of indirectly directed at me for people that couldn't do, we have, again, not to get too far down a rabbit hole, but especially in underserved areas, right? We have a huge problem with not enough ER physicians board certified ER physicians, residency trained to work in those emergency rooms. And my answer to that is we as a specialty need to have a come to Jesus moment, and people need to be working there. And I've done it. I've worked in small towns in Texas, and I enjoy it quite a bit. But because of that, we depend on individuals like yourselves, to go to ATLS and do the requirements and stay current to man those underserved ERs. And I think it's great that so many of you have stepped up and done that. But I get a little protective when it starts to all get lumped together. That and anybody who's if you've done a shift in an ER, you're an ER doc.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I kind of think that devalues residency. And I've had people like you talked about that individual arguing with me on that they were denied ER residency because they went to med school in Grenada and there was no way they were going to. And I'm like, hey, and again, you might. Like same as what you said. I said, you might be the smartest person I've ever had a conversation with, right? I can't control that. You're talking about things that are completely beyond my control. But and they're arguing with me that I should write a letter to ABEM so they can go work in a level 1 trauma center somewhere. And I'm like, hey, dude, I know you online. I'm not going to do that.
No, I mean, we have I don't know. We have residencies for a reason. I mean, May had the same thing. She had a PA telling an X-ray tech that PAs were smarter than physicians because they only had to go to school for 2 years
to learn the same stuff.
Well, and that's again, I wanted to be a PA. I didn't want to go to med school. I wanted to be a PA. The Army denied me that because at the time they had put an age and years of service cap on the military PA school. But this whole, this whole myth that, PAs go to med school in 2 years. It's the same curriculum, but it's in 2 years. No, it's not. And I had a PA in my med school class who would tell you, no, it's not. It absolutely is not. One of my closest friends, Andy Fisher, who was one of the most high-speed PAs anyone could ever meet. He was the PA for a couple of different Ranger battalions and for regiment. He basically wrote the book on trauma, wrote the book on combat blood transfusion, and he's in his 4th year of surgical residency now. And Andy doesn't buy that for a minute. The whole, PAs go to med school, and like you said, go to med school in 2 years.
Impossible.
We haven't, at the same place that I did ER residency, we had an EM fellowship for PAs. And again, it's also half the time. It's a year and a half as opposed to 3 years. So then people are going, well, I did med school in 2 years and then I did ER residency in a year and a half. It's like, well, no, you didn't really. It's, you're highly trained. And I'll tell you what, an EM fellowship trained PA, I would work next to in an ER any day of the week because they are highly trained, highly competent, and they do drink from the fire hose. But to say that it's exactly the same, that, I mean, that cheapens, you're cheapening what a lot of people have worked so hard to do when you say that.
No,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And again, a lot of this just comes down to, the kind of training people got after they graduated. I mean, we have some very, very good friends that we've worked with over the years that are PAs, and I would send my family to them before I would send them to lots of different doctors.
Yeah.
I mean, I could make the
absolutely
list
true.
and write it out, but it's because they took their career really seriously, and they got really good training after, and they kept up a lot,
Right.
and so, I mean, I hate the cliche, but it is what it is. And, but the sad thing is, I think, is for patients. I mean, people don't really understand it. It's really hit me since I started back in a more full-time role in medicine. I took a fair bit of time off, and then I worked part-time for a while. Is the influence of the cultural pressures on patients are amazing. And the thing, we want to do an episode on this. I reached out to one of our friends who's an epidemiologist to see if he can break down the data. But RSV. So I have all these elderly patients because I work in Southwest Florida. They come in and they're scared to, I'll say, well, we could do a COVID test. We could do a flu test. I think what you have is influenza. There is treatment for that. It's not great, but it's helpful. Maybe. And they're like, well, was it RSV? And they're scared to death of this. And I said, isn't it strange that you didn't know what RSV was until they started advertising it?
And now you're terrified of it?
Yeah. And now you're terrified of it. I mean, so like it literally, it's like a Jim Jones Kool-Aid fest. And we're all just sitting there watching two of the greatest college football games in the world last night. And what do you see for the ads? It's RSV and Kelsey telling you can get 2 shots, one of which is still not approved.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why people buy into this. Well, because it's the only thing they feed on. And I think it's why, so much of it's not alternative medicine. It's either medicine or it's not. But so much of these alternative delivery systems are really what's going to save people's lives and save healthcare is by saying, maybe it's actually diet that's more important than any pill that I can take. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe it's hormones. Maybe it's all of these other things that, big pharma's ignored.
Yeah. And you talked about that, these commercials that you see on TV, and the uptick in these commercials coincided with the same time that we basically kicked all the drug reps out of the hospital, right? There used to be a time, I don't know how it was in Canada, but there used to be a time in the US that you go into grand rounds and, your first 10 minutes of grand round, there'd be food that some drug rep paid for, right? And your first 10 minutes of grand rounds would be them getting up, talking about Arixtra, or cardism or whatever it was.
Right.
And they give you a little vignette and they'd pass out their little 1-pagers and you'd look it over. And, no breakfast taco ever impacted my clinical decisions.
Exactly.
Right. I'm going to tell you, I went to a drug rep. I did a psych rotation in Hawaii and I went to a drug rep dinner in Hawaii. And I probably learned more at that dinner about how SSRIs work than I learned in all of medical school. Because there was a board certified psychiatrist with 3 decades of practice up there talking about these medications. And I thought in a lot of ways it was beneficial. And I never knew any doctor. There might have been some weak-willed doctors out there that, that were, maybe getting kickbacks and doing stuff all the slide. Because as you said, the word corruption really scares people, but corruption comes in a lot of sheep's clothing. But at the end of the day, it's still corruption, right?
Well, sometimes corruption comes in the format of a top-heavy blonde with donuts and coffee.
Yes. That and you're not doing your own research because you don't want to tell her no for whatever reason, right? And they're bringing free samples and all this other stuff, right? And hey, you've had a lot of success for this. Maybe we can fly you out to Vegas so you can talk to these other doctors about our drug and how great it is, right? And people certainly succumb to that. But as that went away, Big Pharma still had all these marketing dollars. And so they looked to television. And it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I'm like the fact that they can go direct to the consumer Um, and now I have to spend time out of a patient encounter to explain, no, that commercial that you saw is bullshit, and no, you don't need that, and no, it's not right for you. That's, now that's taken up more time. So, I almost feel like we were better off the other way around.
Yeah.
Although, it's I can point to that because there's so many people out there that I know that have never worked in medicine that have all these crazy conspiracy theories about the medical machine. And I can say, well, hey, there's definitely no more backdoor deals going on like that anymore, because now they're peddling it directly to you, and we're having to deal with that on a daily basis. Unfortunately, it's commercials, big pharma being allowed to advertise on TV, I think is number one, probably the thing that's going directly to the public that annoys me. Number two, I don't think anybody, The View should never be allowed to discuss anything that has to do with medicine. So somebody goes on there and talks about their journey. I literally had somebody brought their mother into the ER, and I'm not going to violate HIPAA. And it's so long ago, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was. And then basically, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a CAT scan. And the daughter said, well, I want an MRI. And I said, well, there's two problems with that. First of all, an MRI is clearly not indicated for what we're looking for here.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I couldn't order the MRI if I wanted to, because it's not considered an emergency. One of the, on our short list of emergency MRIs, that's not on there. And then, number three, the MRI is not even running right now. And I said, what, just out of curiosity. And she said, well, an MRI is better. And I said, well, I don't know. Is a New York strip better than a ribeye? It's a matter of personal preference, and it's a matter of what you're seeking to do with it.
Right.
And that's kind of a bad analogy, I guess. Is a boat better than a plane? Right.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's probably a better analogy. Is a boat better than a plane? And I said, where did you hear? And she said, I was watching The View, and I don't remember who was on, but they said, insist on getting an MRI. And I was like, for what? And she said, well, I don't really remember.
I don't know. I just heard the word insist on getting an MRI.
No, it really it is. It's truly amazing. Like the thing, we're in cold and flu season, and the thing that always blows my mind is that if I don't want to give you antibiotics, it's because somehow I'm withholding something of value from you.
Right.
No, you don't understand. If I write a prescription for you, I can code higher.
Yeah.
You will go away faster, which is in my best interest. You'll
give me a better Press-Ganey score.
You'll give me a better Press-Ganey. Like everything is actually even more motivated for me to do something that's unwarranted than not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason why I'm not so that means the only reason I can possibly be for not writing this prescription is because you actually don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's never the option. It's like, they just look at you like with deer in headlights eyes. Like, it's like, you're not going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's not indicated. And actually it's harmful. Like we're killing the Earth's microbiome,
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah. I had a young lady come in and see me, and her mother was with her. The patient wasn't a minor. And she had some type of viral process. And I said, oh, yeah, unfortunately I don't have an antiviral that I can prescribe you. And her mom said, what about a Z-Pack?
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yeah. And I said, no, I said, that's an antibiotic. It's not an antiviral. She goes, no. My doctor, the last time he prescribed it to me, he said it's the best antiviral on the market. And I said, your doctor was making fun of you to your face.
Yes.
Good for you.
Literally making fun of you to your face. And you're exactly right. They think the doctors that cave and give them what they want, they think are the better doctors, the doctors that are more in tune with it. But I had an argument, or I won't say an argument. I had a discussion with an EM physician, and it didn't have to do with prescribing medications. It was on a different issue, but it was very similar. That, I was very much an advocate for drawing a line in the sand, and hey, this is a painful conversation that we need to have with patients. And he said, well, I think you're being really unfair. I don't think you're thinking about your feelings. He said, I think I'm just more compassionate than you. And I said, no, I think you're more cowardly than I am.
Yep.
Because
There
you don't
you
want the
go.
patient to get mad. You don't want a bad Press Ganey score.
No, because he doesn't want confrontation. It's easier just to
Exactly.
have no confrontation, make them go away. They're happy.
Mhm.
There's no exactly.
No,
Yeah.
but in defense of that behavior, like I think if people understand the pressures that you're actually on,
Mhm.
like if you put it, we've done urgent care and busy family practice for almost 30 years, and you've
Mhm.
done ER, and you sit there and you go, okay, so let's assume you're in a small West Texas town, and you're the only guy, and there's no helicopter, and you have a car versus semi wreck in the next room, and you've
Mhm.
just intubated one of those patients, and they're both unstable, and somebody comes in that's been waiting for 5 hours and wants a Z-Pack. Why on earth would you just not do whatever it takes to make them go away? Because you're
Yeah.
actually dealing with stuff that's
Mhm.
really, really important.
Yeah. And
I mean,
that's a hard decision. You've been faced with similar, and I've been faced with similar, and it's hard to stick to your guns in that case. And
Oh yeah.
it's an argument that goes back. And you mentioned before all the seniors that you have coming in, wanting to get checked for RSV. And I can remember I was going through residency when we had the H1N1 kind of mini epidemic here in Texas, and we got it. We started as a joke. All of my fellow residents and I started. We came together and we said we were going to do this. We started beginning every single patient encounter with, "Hello, I'm Dr. Simpson. You do not have H1N1. How can I help you today?"
yes.
I love it.
No,
Like literally, it's like, let's just get that out of the way, right out of the bat. Like we're not even going to entertain questions on it, because guess what? It's a send out lab, so we won't know till next week anyway, and we ain't going to do anything for you anyway. And oh, by the way, for most people, it's a mild case of the flu.
Right.
Like if you're not a pediatric patient or you don't have respiratory issues, you're probably going to be fine.
Well, but that's the thing. That's the thing with RSV. I mean,
Mhm.
even in the high risk group, which is by far infants, like children under 6 weeks of age.
Mhm.
They just posted New England Journal of Medicine just posted a picture of the study
Mhm.
on Instagram, and there was 4,000, like just over
Right.
4,000 in each arm of the study. Well, there was 60 kids hospitalized that didn't get the monoclonal antibody, and there was 11 that did. Well, it doesn't say anything about how many died. My guess is 0 died. So are you going to give
Probably,
every
yeah.
single baby in the United States a novel agent with no long-term data?
Yeah.
to-
That's
to
that's scary. I don't know where you guys were. So full disclosure, I got the Moderna COVID shot. I got the 2-shot series. I have never been convinced by any of the booster data, and I've never gotten a booster.
We're
You know,
right
and
there with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay.
Same
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think there's negative efficacy data too.
Yeah,
which is-
well, yeah, especially, and I'm 57 years old. And originally I was telling people, you know what? If you're under 30, maybe you don't need to worry about it. I've kind of revised that after seeing, how many people in their 20s getting cardiac issues and everything else from it. I'm like, maybe I should have raised that even higher. And maybe I was concerned because I'm like, well, I'm over 55. I'm working in healthcare, so I'm definitely, I'm probably definitely going to get it because I'm exposed to it all the time. And I'm a little, I know for a fact I'm a little vitamin D deficient. I'm not obese, but I've got some issues, and I'm like, I don't see a downside for me for getting it. I looked at the phase 3 trial data, and I'm like, okay, for me personally, and where I'm at, I know that this is a reasonable risk benefit for me.
Yep.
So I'm going to get the 2-shot Moderna series, and my wife did too. My wife, she's 11 years my junior, but knowing that she was going to have to be in contact with me. And then what ended up happening was, I think 4 months after I got the second shot in the series, I'm in Ukraine. I'm going back and forth across the border, and I encountered some COVID patients one day. One of which ended up dying, and I ended up getting COVID, and I felt absolutely awful for 24 hours, like just terrible. Then I felt not bad, but incredibly weak for another 24. And then by the day after that, I was doing pretty well. And I like to think that it was because I had some titers, because I'd had the Moderna shot, that I did so well. And I haven't had issues since then. We're pretty sure we had an expired COVID test in the house that was equivocal. We're pretty sure that my wife had COVID about 2 months ago, and I was fine through all of that. So.
Yes. Time will tell, or it won't, because I have a feeling we may not be getting a lot of that data. But that's a whole other, other story.
That's been our experience on the front line with that.
So, yeah, and I think, unfortunately, just one more thing, we can move on. I know we don't want to do a COVID rabbit hole, but the problem is the message was so shifting.
Oh yeah.
Fauci is a narcissist who didn't want to, was incapable of admitting mistakes, and because of that, it spawned his opposite number at the opposite end of the spectrum. So then we had a couple. I'm not going to dignify them by mentioning their names, but we had a couple of narcissists on the other end of the COVID spectrum. One of which was on the verge of homeless list. The other had lost his practice. And basically, they've now made millions just saying that mRNA shots are literally Satan, and ivermectin is the second coming of Jesus Christ himself. And it's hard to convince the people in the middle on Sanity Island. No, I don't want you to listen to that guy or that guy. I want you to look at this right here in the middle.
Well, and it is. We've gone way down the rabbit hole in medical freedom, and it's interesting because you meet some people in real life, and you go, "You might have got the right answer. You're still crazy."
Because even a stop clock is right twice a day.
Yeah,
right?
no, it really is crazy. Yeah. So tell this. One of the most interesting things in your profile is hunting Hitler. So how in the world did that come about?
Well, define what hunting Hitler.
Well, everyone should know
Hitler's
what
dead.
Everyone should know what hunting Hitler is. The TV show.
Is he still? Yeah.
Well, no. The question was, did he actually make it to Argentina?
Right. So it was a television show, a docu-reality series that basically sought to answer the question: Did Hitler die in the bunker? Or was that a body double? And all along he had fled through the rat lines and made his way to South America, where he ultimately died of old age while sitting next to a lake painting in the 1960s. And that was the question that we sought to answer with that. We did three seasons. I was not in the first season. My close friend Tim Kennedy was in the first season. After they did the first season, they were looking for someone else to be on the show, somebody with minus the medical aspect of my resume, somebody with my resume. So, somebody that had a special operator resume and was interested in doing something like this, preferably with some language skills and some other kind of specific skills that have to do with basically doing investigations and not just straight up military stuff. And I met all the requirements for it. And Tim had made a post on social media that they were looking for somebody. And I reached out to him. He said, send me your resume and I'll forward it to the production company, which he did. And they reached out. So funny story. The production company wanted me to do it. The network did not. The network said, can you find me this guy younger, taller, and better looking? Because that's what we want.
I get that all the time.
Yeah. So, and I said, I told the production company, I don't think that guy exists, because part of me building the resume is being old. Right. And I assure you, 20 years ago, I was better looking. I can't do anything about the taller portion of it, though. I'm sorry. And basically what happened is they interviewed 5 people. They kicked the other 4 to the curb. And then they went out and found more people, and they actually gave the role to somebody else.
Oh, wow.
And they told me, hey, it was really, thanks for trying out. We would have loved to have you. It's not going to happen. And we gave it to this other guy. 10 minutes later, they sent me an email saying, wait a minute, that individual has a family emergency. Can't do it. Are you still interested? And since I read both emails at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm still interested. And they said, oh, okay, well, don't book any flights yet because the network still doesn't want you, is basically what they said.
Oh my goodness.
And finally, I think Tim actually had to intercede and say, look, this guy can do the work. Let's get him on the team. I was still on active duty. I was getting ready to retire. So I took a month's leave to fly over to Spain and Morocco and do some work with James Holland there. During the course of filming that, they knew that they were going to do the season finale as a wrap up in South America, and the director asked me if I would be, and the showrunner asked me if I'd be interested in doing a couple more episodes and being a part of that. I said I would. So then I went back to work clinically because I had already lined up my retirement job, and then they said, hey, we need you to, we're going to start filming on this date. And I went to the hospital and I said, hey, I'm going to go do this. And they were like, oh yeah, we're not cool with that at all. And I said, well, sorry, but I'm going to go do this. I said, hey, look, medicine's always going to be here for me. This is a one-shot deal.
Yeah,
so if you want to fire me, I'll come back and look for another job. It took me a week to find this one. The demand is out there. I'll find another job. They ended up not firing me. I ended up leaving that hospital system later for other reasons. But I did that season. I did 5 episodes in season 2, and then I was in, I think, 8 episodes in season 3. And that's how we did. That's kind of how I became involved in that. I had since then I've done with James Holland. I've done some documentary work that aired. You can find it on Amazon Prime. It's a 3-part series called Normandy 44 and the Battle for France, which I did. I've had various offers. I've done a couple of different pilots that didn't get made. I did get a solid offer on a couple other concepts that I came up with, but by the time they came around and they wanted to do them, I said, you know what, I'm kind of sick of traveling and I just don't want to do it anymore. So my unless the absolute ideal thing comes my way and or I get to do, because I would love to do, I've always wanted to do something scripted like a movie or television series. If that came my way, I would 100% jump on it. But I think my days of doing docu-reality are probably behind me.
Wow, that sounds like fun. Kind of like my dream. Maybe we could just revamp ER and make it with the real physicians as the actors, though, and make it.
Yeah, well,
yeah, that would be amazing. People would love that.
I had a concept that actually that a production company picked it up, couldn't sell it, and then another production company immediately jumped on it. It was called ERFR, which was basically going to be like a combination of that show. There was a show, I think it was called 24 Hours in the ER or something like that.
Yep.
It was going to be kind of a mashup of that and Expedition Unknown. And I think it would have been fun to do, but it would have been the thing about doing TV like that. I got to tell you, is it's completely exhausting. I mean, it's beyond combat deployment exhausting, just because of the hours that you have to do and picking up and moving. I got to say, this is going to sound kind of weird, but I would work with a British production company again in a heartbeat because they have a totally different approach to docu-reality. It's working with Hollywood-based companies is really difficult because you have to shoot everything 20 times because they're very much caught up in this. Well, what if we decide things go this way, or what if we decide things go that way? They want to basically
have their options.
They want to give the editing room hundreds of hours of footage and let them kind of shape the narrative of the story, right? And in the UK, docu-reality companies are very different. They're much more, what I like to call like almost like guerrilla journalism type style is, hey, we're going to go out, 4 of us in a van. We're going to pull up to a location. We're going to check your mics. We're going to roll, and you guys are just going to talk. And then we're going to jump in the van and we're going to go somewhere else. The 3-part series I shot Normandy 44, and it's 3, I think they're between 45 minutes and an hour, all of them. We shot that in 6 days in northern France. If we would have shot that same thing in with a US-based company, it would have taken us at least 6 weeks to shoot, because we were basically downstairs every morning with our bags, put them in the vehicle, eat breakfast, mic up, roll, shoot until lunchtime, grab a quick lunch, shoot until the sun was setting,
Oh my gosh.
check into another hotel somewhere in the Normandy region of France, grab a quick dinner, see you guys downstairs at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, go to sleep. And that was, we only slept the whole time we shot that. I only slept in the same bed twice. Although, pretty much every morning. And I brought my wife with me, which was cool because she really, after doing 2 seasons of Hunting Hitler, she's like, oh yeah, but you go over and you stay in these 5-star hotels and everything's all laid back. She thought it was like, where you see where I got the little folding chair with my name on the back of it. Right. And I'm sitting over there while something else is going on, reading a book or something. And then I walk into frame and say a couple of cool things and then walk out of frame again. And she's like, by day 3, she's like, holy shit, this is hard work. I said, yeah. Now you know why I was so damn tired when I got back.
No kidding.
So 2 questions to kind of wrap this up. Number 1, did Hitler die painting by a lake in Argentina?
No, Hitler died in the bunker. And so peel back the onion a little bit. So what we found out, the whole series that I did was based on a documentary that another production company had done and that had aired on another network. And basically that production company had been a little bit less than truthful about some of the things that they had uncovered. But because what they presented data-wise ended up making a very compelling case, that kind of was the impetus for us to do the show that we did. And not to say that there wasn't some evidence out there and there wasn't a lot of questionable stuff out there. And I can tell you that, everything that you saw on camera, we weren't, if somebody said something or reported seeing something, that was real. Anything that we presented in the way of forensic evidence, that was all real, because we all went into it as investigators with the mindset of, we're going to go in whatever direction the evidence takes us, right? We don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have to prove that he lived, and I don't have to prove that he died. And pretty much universally throughout the team of investigators, that was our philosophy. That was definitely, speaking for Tim and I especially, it's like, hey, this is like a recon mission. We are only here to report the information as data, and that's up to somebody else to interpret that data. What ended up happening after the 3rd season, and at the time they were still contemplating the possibility of shooting a 4th season. A few of us among the team said, hey, if we do a 4th season, we should do it. Why don't we just do a 4th season called Hunting Evil? And because we've in the course of doing this investigation, we've actually uncovered a lot of stuff that people didn't know about. I found graves I found graves in Uruguay where the Iron Cross that this guy received is right there on his headstone, right? These are guys that fled. And we started uncovering a lot of these individuals in these little enclaves and these little communities all over South America. And I said, we could do episodes on each one of all these things we uncovered kind of accidentally. We could do individual episodes on. And a lot of us were kind of that opinion. They were still kind of waffling back and forth on what they wanted to do. And there was a French team it's a French team of dentists that specialize in kind of reconstruction and dental forensics. And they actually got access to the skull and jawbone that is in the Moscow archives that for forever was reported to be Hitler's. And they proved with 99.999% certainty that it is his. They were allowed to do everything other than crush a tooth to extract DNA, but they were able to match it to his dental records that couldn't be faked. Like, this isn't a body double that they just did the same dental work on. It's like this dental work had years of wear and tear on it. They were able to do scrapings to determine that all of the matter that they got from between his teeth there was no animal protein whatsoever. Right. Hitler was a vegetarian. So again,
of course he was evil and an evil mastermind. Ergo, he was a vegetarian.
Oh,
yes, he was, because vegetarian. That's when people say, "Well, I'm a vegetarian." Well, so was Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. I love that quote.
Yeah, and there was cyanide staining on his teeth. So, like I say, as close as you can get to proving it, they proved it, and we were never able to come up with anything definitive. We had a lot of, hey, this could be, this very well could be, but we never got a grave. We never got a definitive eyewitness, to him in his later years. A lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, a lot of people that had heard from somebody who had heard from somebody, and a lot of them you ended up seeing on camera. I think the only person that was really kind of disappointed by our findings was Gerard. God rest him. He passed away after we wrapped the show, but he had written a number of books basically based on the premise that Hitler had gotten away. Probably the most famous of which is a book called Grey Wolf. But the fact that we kind of we weren't able to prove it definitively, and then the French forensic team pretty much did definitively prove that he died in the bunker. But believe it or not, even after all these years, the last season 3 aired in, I think, 2018. I still get people ask me, "Hey, when are you guys going to do season 4?" And I'm like, man, you got to move on.
You can do Hunting Elvis.
Yeah, I guess we could do that.
But that's easy. He's working in a 7-Eleven at Tufts
somewhere. Yeah,
he's working in Vegas on the
yeah,
all over.
So,
I have to ask though, because you've got this great quote. I don't know, or a life philosophy quote on life and death that. I heard that in the last week, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So can you sort of share with our listeners, your quote and sort of the philosophy or perspective behind that?
Yeah, the quote that I'm 90% sure that you're referring to is, I used to be, I'm back on Twitter, but I'm not very active on it. I used to be very active on Twitter, and the tweet that I had pinned to my profile was I am highly proficient in 2 things: killing people and saving lives. So if you piss me off enough, I may kill you and then resuscitate you just so I can kill you again. And that tweet ended up simultaneously going viral and also at the same time generating calls to the Texas Medical Board calling for me to have my board certification revoked and no longer practice medicine, because there were a lot of people that didn't think a physician should be posting things like that. But I ended up having made it made into a T-shirt, so it's which hasn't sold all that well, but it is on a T-shirt. If you go to rangerup.com, it is still sold on a T-shirt at Ranger Up. So
actually, that sounds really.
Well, I was thinking,
really good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's appropriate for a physician or not. I just heard that and I was like, are you taking orders? Because, like.
So did you just, I'm assuming you just meant it as kind of a fun.
Yeah, I didn't like.
There was nothing bigger behind it.
I'm not a sociopath. I'm not, I'm not going to chain somebody up in my basement and, kill them, run a code on them, bring them back, nurse them back to health, and kill them again. It's just.
Or there wasn't any big story behind that.
That
happened in the military.
Nothing like, I didn't, somebody did try to insinuate so the weird extrapolation that they got from that was that I had been involved in some weird interrogation techniques.
Good Lord.
It's the mental gymnastics that people will do when they find offense in something is truly remarkable.
No, it's obviously a joke. Have a freaking sense of humor.
Exactly. It's and then that's why when I got back on Twitter, the first thing I did is I pinned a tweet with the telephone number to the Texas Medical Board. So I said, Perfect. If anything in my content offends you, here's, just call them directly, let them know. I have no problem with that. So. Yeah,
like there was one comedian, I forget his name, and he said something. He said something really offensive about I don't know, it was misogynistic or whatever it was, and so he came on and did kind of a fake apology, and he said, if you want the full apology, click here. And it was Matt
Rife.
Matt Rife. Yeah. And then it went to adult diapers or something like that.
It was he had a couple. Helmet. One of them was adult diapers, I think, and one was to a special needs helmet.
Yes. Yeah, special needs helmet. And I was like, that is exactly how you deal with that.
Yeah, I just watched Chappelle's new special on Netflix last night, and it's equally as offensive as all of Chappelle's shows, and it's awesome because you have to learn to laugh at shit.
No, exactly
right.
Okay, so to wrap this up and go back to medicine, what about if you're going to give one piece of advice to somebody like me, 58-year-old who pretends to still be an athlete, et cetera, and what is the most important thing? Is it sleep? Is it diet? Is it exercise? Is it May and I having more sex? I mean, I don't know.
See, and the thing is, I would lump all those together because you'll find arguments for all of them, right? Oh, it's all about sleep. It's all about diet. It's all about exercise. Out of those, I would have to say that, believe it or not, as much as a gym rat as I am, the exercise aspect of it, if you're talking about longevity and overall health, is probably the least important. It's if you got a good solid 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night and ate right and never saw the gym, maybe did some walking here and there, you're probably better off than somebody who sabotages the other two and is in there doing a new deadlift PR every week. But I would sum it all up in lifestyle, and the thing that I tell, the thing that I try to emphasize to people more than anything is there are no shortcuts.
Oh boy, that's
it. And once you accept that there are no shortcuts, then everything kind of opens itself up. There's no shortcuts. I mean, obviously you can't shortcut. The way people try to shortcut sleep is they make the most useless statement in the world. People go, can you imagine how much you could accomplish if you didn't have to sleep at night? Well, it's okay. Can you imagine how much we could accomplish if the sun didn't set, how much solar energy we could harness? But it does. So, don't right. fret over things you can't. You do need that sleep. So rather than fret about it, just get the damn sleep, right? There's no shortcuts in diet. It's not, fad diets, keto, paleo, which are probably paleo being the least offensive, keto probably being number 2. Carnivore, veganism, vertical, horizontal, the grapefruit diet, the whatever diet,
F-plan. I remember that from the we were about the same age. I remember that from the 70s.
Yeah.
You just eat nothing but fiber. And it's like,
eat tobacco leaves. I don't know. I mean, there's all these crazy diets out there. And it's like, hey, you know what? Don't eat. I said, what if I told you, don't even worry about what you're eating, just worry about where it came from. Yeah. Like, don't eat anything that comes out of a can, came out of a box, or got handed to you through your car window. Just do that.
So you're saying I can still eat meth?
Oh, stop it.
Or tobacco leaves.
Okay. That was a joke.
Well, meth, I got to say, meth is processed, right? It's processed in a shitty house in a bad part of town, but it is processed. That'd be considered processed food.
Ultra processed, like, unless you get the blue stuff from the founder.
Right. If you get the real stuff, the Walter White stuff, right?
Yes.
Exactly. But it's all around lifestyle. You have to have them all together. Exercise. There's no shortcuts in the gym. The people shortcut. I say in my chapter on when I talk about exercise, I said shortcuts do nothing but pave the way to injuries. You're like, I gotta get gotta get in shape by X time. I have this coming up or I have that coming up. That's when you get hurt. And that's when you don't get enough benefit. So, life is a marathon, not a sprint. consistency over time equals results. Try to eat, good, good sourced food, lean. I'm a firm believer in lean, healthy animal protein that you cook yourself in your own kitchen. And, in my house, we cook exclusively with olive oil, and I roast a lot of Brussels sprouts. And, I eat all the things that I hated as a kid. And I found that if you cut Brussels sprouts in half and sprinkle olive oil on them and some sea salt, and you throw them in the oven for 25 minutes, they're delicious. And believe it or not, you can do the same with cauliflower and broccoli, all the things that I, in the past tended to dislike. You can do that. And, so get plenty of sleep, drink plenty of water. Nobody gets enough water,
No.
And I start out every day. I drink a 16-ounce bottle of water first thing when I wake up every day. And I drink water throughout the day. And, it's nobody gets enough water. Most people don't get enough sunlight.
Yes.
It's a problem. We're almost all vitamin D deficient. So, in short, it's if I had to call it one thing and one thing only, I would call it lifestyle. And just remember that there are no shortcuts.
No, I love that. There are no shortcuts.
And if you keep that in mind, that there's no shortcuts, and I tell people this on the subject of not being shortcuts, I said, how long did it take? I haven't been to the gym in a year. Guys that tell me that I haven't been to the gym in a year, I tell them, how long do you think it's going to take me to get back in shape? And I say, at least a year. And they look at me like all shocked. And I'm like, well, what do you expect? You didn't work out for a year. What are you expecting? 3 weeks? I say, take whatever time you didn't work out, somewhere between times 1 and times 1.5 is how long it's going to take you to get back to the shape that you were before you completely started neglecting yourself.
Outstanding. That is, we could go on and on. We haven't even touched on jujitsu, which, I mean, I know you and Tim Kennedy, and, that's a whole other, that's one thing I've always liked. I got 600 skydives, rode dirt bikes forever. I love the action sports, tons of windsurfing, etc. But the fighting was never my thing. That I get the mentality, but for whatever reason, that was never attractive to me. But the people that are into it are like into it.
Yeah, and I got to say, the last 2 years I've been, I have neglected myself jiu-jitsu wise, really not just 2023, really 2022 and 2023. And I have my first class of 2024 is tonight, and I'm looking forward to that. And I do want to kind of redouble my efforts and recommit myself to jiu-jitsu, because it is, aside from all the minor injuries that I get, it's, it's great to keep me healthy, and I take out a lot of frustration, and I hit the bag. I do a little bit of strike training on the side as well. Not as much as I do grappling, but I thoroughly enjoy it. I'm this month, I'm an instructor for a couple of different systems for law enforcement, defensive tactics. And one of those companies, Effective Fitness Combatives, is doing a week-long course here in the Austin area this month. And I'm going to be one of the assistant instructors for that. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool. Outstanding. So, but remember, you're getting back into it. There are no shortcuts.
That's right.
That's right. No shortcuts. Yeah. So, I'll take it easy, and I don't beat myself up. I'm a 57-year-old purple belt. If a 23-year-old white belt is kicking my ass, and maybe he's more athletic than me, got better cardio than I do, maybe even outweighs me a little bit, I don't beat myself up for that. I'm there to learn. I'm not, at the end of the day, it's not going to say, I'm not going to be applying for a mortgage and they're going to go, I see here you got submitted by a white belt. I'm afraid we can't give you this loan.
Oh, they will say that, actually. We just...
Yeah, well, yeah. They look at every other damn thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not looking at that.
Exactly.
It's crazy. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been great. If you don't mind just hanging out for a sec after we hit stop so we make sure everything's downloaded, that would be amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we'll have to do this again because there's so many other bunny trails I'd love to go down with you.
Happy to. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing and getting the word out and debunking medical myths and confronting what's really wrong in medicine today.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us on today's episode of BS Free MD with Dr. Mike Simpson. Man, from that small town life, and I can relate to that, from Tehachapi, I hope I said it right, I probably butchered it, to the vast world of special ops and ER medicine. I really think he took us on a great journey through stories of, courage, resilience, and unwavering dedication. And remember, each episode is a new chapter in the remarkable book of life, and medicine is seen through the eyes of really a true professional. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our next adventure with Dr. Simpson. Can't wait, really. I wonder what he'll be up to next.
Yeah, no kidding, right? For now, this is BS3MD wishing you health, wisdom, and unforgettable moments. Until we meet again, goodbye and take care.
Oh, wait, but no, don't say goodbye yet.
But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. Shut up. To my bro, Randy Grubbs. We see you on social media. And yes, we have landed safely in Sarasota. And we are very happy. So,
and Tim gets to do his wakeboarding. Yeah, right. You're not wakeboarding.
Never. I would not do that.
He's out there learning how to kite surf, and I'm trying to relax by the calm pool with the plastic gators. Thanks for asking, Randy.
All right. Later.
Bye.
All right. Farewell, coffee roasters. More than just coffee, it's your companion in life's journey. Hand roasted with dedication, each cup is a story and inspiration.
So embark on this flavorful and inspiring adventure with us. We drink it. We know you'll love it too. Place your first order at www.farewellcoffeeroasters.com. That's FARE coffeeroasters.com, and discover the story with every sip. Use the code BSFreeMD15 for 15% off your first order.
And just of note, we started drinking this. We posted some stuff on Instagram. They really grooved to our rhythm, and we reached out to them as far as working together because we like it so much. When we talk about this, it's definitely the real deal. We know that you'll like it.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit, uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time. So we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS3MD. See you next time.
Well, we try to keep BS3MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.